Hi, and welcome to the 2-Minute Warning. I am your host, Perry Busby. The 2-Minute Warning is brought to you by the Westside Gazette newspaper here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The Westside Gazette has been serving the South Florida community for 50 years, and we are coming close to the close of that 50 years. And my co-host is the publisher of the Westside Gazette, Mr. Bobby Henry. Bobby, how you doing, my brother?
You know, as always, Mr. Busby, I am terrific and getting better, trying to get into this holiday spirit. I mean, not, as you can see, you know, it's all good. It's all good. No,
I had a different green. My green was power to the people green.
Right on. I love it. I love it. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So, you know, before we came on air, you were telling me about a situation in Georgia, in Griffin, Georgia, just to set the tone here.
Yeah, there has in Griffin, Georgia, ever since the Georgia legislature passed the recent voting laws, which allowed certain election commissions to be overturned. And it appears that in Griffin, Georgia, the election commissioners have overturned the 3 Black Democratic precinct chairs that were on the committee, and on the way now, I think, to getting the Black supervisor of elections dismissed as well.
Wow, man. You know, and I know we're constantly talking about how important it is for us to get out and vote, you know, and there's all kind of tactics to try to prevent this. So brothers and sisters, it's imperative that we pay attention to all acts of disenfranchisement, all acts of voter suppression, and wherever it may raise its ugly head, we need to chop it off.
Yeah. And as I said, it also raised a point, and I'm sure it's not just something related to Griffin, but when you begin to look at who's really at the forefront of elections in our community, these are more senior people. And in the case of Griffin, it was 3 Black women. I think they were they were all seniors. And so it kind of leaves you to the forceful and the bullying you can understand that would probably be taking place sometimes at the forefront and at the most pivotal point of where we vote. Because we've kind of left that over to the people who have been most committed to voting, and that's been seniors.
Yeah, man. And you know, I can't remember right now off the top of my head who was that person that says, if you want to know something about a country, you know about how they treat their senior citizens, their women, and their babies. So that says a lot about this country. Now, another thing we were talking about earlier, Perry, has anybody else noticed how sparse the shelves are in the grocery stores and other department stores?
Yeah. There has been, and I know that there's been some talk about supply chain, but then there's been some noticeable changes of some shortages, especially here locally.
You know, it gets kind of scary, man, when you are accustomed to going into a grocery store or let's say a home improvement store, and the shelves are usually stocked to the brim. But now when you go into these stores, you're apt to find bare shelves and things that you want. You know, you can't find them in one store.
Yeah. Well, it started me looking because I was feeling it regarding a little breakfast item that I use all the time and have become accustomed to getting. I mean, without a problem. And that was half and half milk.
Mm-hmm.
And I started noticing it in Publix and some of the other stores and going, well, why is half and half milk, so sparse? And came across an article today where I found out that Publix is in some cases deliberately keeping items from some shelves for fear of an overrun, like they said that was pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're kind of living, I'm like, I understand pre-COVID, but now you're determining. And they said one of the craziest thing was Publix held back on cranberry sauce during Thanksgiving.
Mm.
And they were like, well, why would you deliberately? And they said that they didn't want to, they didn't want to have a shortage, but yet what you said you wanted to avoid still ended up in empty shelves.
Mm-hmm. Could you bring that comment back, please? Is that Daniela Pierre?
Mm-hmm.
Daniela says there appears to be a disruption in supply chain, production, and overall availability for a number of items. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are seeing that. It's like, oh man, there we see movies and stuff where you say, no, this can't be happening, but it's real, man, and
Yeah.
we better pay attention.
Well, no, and it lets you know really how much we depend on
Mhm.
each other. I mean, some people will look past uh, those tomato farmers,
Hmm.
tomato pickers, should I say, who can't speak English in California, who picking tomatoes and for less than 2 cents a pound.
Hmm. Yeah, man. That's it's all over. Look, I know we got a very exciting evening
Yeah,
coming up here. You wanna do the honors and let's see uh what's going on, who we got coming on, and see if we could get some full participation from our listeners.
yeah,
Before you do, let me just give a little. Can I just give a little warm up to just a little bit,
sure.
just a little bit. Let's see what that. All right, Perry, you want to tell us who that lady is?
Right, right. Uh, Isley Brothers.
Yeah.
Well, I'm honored uh, to have as a guest tonight, our guest tonight, Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick. She is the Democratic candidate for Congressional District 20 race. Uh, we weren't able to bring her on during the primary race. We had reached out, but our communications got tangled up. But we are so happy to have her join us tonight. And so, without further delay, uh, Democratic candidate for Congressional District 20, Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick.
Good evening.
Good
Good
evening. How are you?
evening. I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm going to help you out. It's Cherfilus-McCormick. I know it's a lot.
Cherfilus. Yeah,
Yes.
Cherfilus-McCormick. Okay, we'll
Cherfilus.
get that right.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes.
You see,
But you can just call me Sheila. That's totally fine also.
you see,
okay.
Sheila. You see, we got to spend some time together so we can get that
So we can
pronunciation
know.
correct.
Right.
Yeah, most people call me Sheila during the election. We had huge trucks and screens where we were playing Oh Sheila by Ready for the World.
Mhm.
So when
Okay.
we walk around now, people will be like, oh Sheila. So it's just call me Sheila and I'm good with it.
Mhm.
Okay, well, great. Thank you. And again, thank you for not just joining Bobby and I, but our listening audience. And like I say, I mean, you are new but not new.
Mhm.
By virtue of your victory, you're not new to the community, uh, but in many ways you are. And so we want to allow this opportunity for all of us to get to know you. And so, for me, I'm just putting it out there. It's not just about, it's not policy talk. If I want to know somebody, I want to know you. And so we're going to start with what made someone who was successful, who had a successful career, decide to take this kind of jump. And you didn't just take the jump just once. This was your third attempt. So what's driving you to do this?
Well, I grew up in Broward County, in Miramar. I've been here since I was 13, and I was raising my daughter here. At one point, I was a single parent, and as I was raising my daughter, she was diagnosed with a learning disability, and trying to get her resources. Initially, her getting diagnosed, they diagnosed her with everything. And I had to take a year off from work, try to find resources, just completely investigate to find out what was going on. During that time, I saw that there was disparities when it came to our children. My daughter, who was at that time in third grade, I started realizing that most of our Black and brown children at third grade get diagnosed with learning disabilities. And at those moments, they actually, they're creating prison cells proportionate to them, because usually the trajectory is that they're going to drop out. And when I saw what resources were available, but outside of our community with other people, where she would be disconnected from the community, I just felt like it was wrong. As I got older, I started seeing that multiple children, not just my daughter, it seemed like so many of our children were being born with all of these learning disabilities, different spectrum, autism, but we didn't have the resource. And I was in healthcare, and I was going to DC and lobbying for different healthcare resources. And one day I just was brave enough to, advocate for myself, the community. And from there, it just kept on multiplying and multiplying. And I felt like we needed change. We needed some policies that touched and concerned our life. And I felt like I was called to do it. I didn't want to run because, I went to law school, met Alcee. He was, everybody knows Alcee is so great. And so I prayed and I said, if this is what you want me to do, Lord, I'll be obedient. So I ran twice, not knowing that it was practice for this moment. And in the third time, with this year, it just was the time for me to win the election and to fulfill that destiny.
Mhm. And Sheila, in the same vein of getting to know you, okay, now I know that you, if once selected, you will be the first Haitian, American Haitian or Haitian of descent in Congress. How does that bode with you? How does that make you feel? How does that make you react or act to your position?
Well, it's an interesting dynamic. I'll be the first Haitian American Democrat. The first Haitian American was actually Amelia Love out of Utah, and she was actually a Mormon. So she couldn't really stand up and advocate for diverse communities, even Haitian community. So being a Haitian American Democrat representing a district that has one of the largest populations of Haitian Americans during a time when we saw Haitian immigrants being whipped at the border, being put on flights, not even given a hearing, and being sent directly to Haiti. And there are even some Black immigrants who were not Haitian, but because you were Black, they put you on a flight and sent you to Haiti. The injustices that we've seen this year towards Black immigrants and Haitians, it really lets me know why I was called for this moment, because we felt like we didn't have a voice. And now we actually have a voice to articulate that. Though we are born here, I was born here, I still understand that every Black immigrant should be treated the same, because I remember having to translate for my parents and my grandparents. I remember having to be that one to help them get on their feet because I spoke English. So that's where I feel like I can fill in the gap. But as important, this is the first time our district has a Black woman who is leading this district. And I think that the duality of it is so important when our district and the entire country has been not promoting Black women. our entire country has had a huge pay gap when it comes to Black women and Black people in general. So I think that there's a fight that we have to encounter. And with 60% women in our district, with 60% Black people in our district, you know, there's just so much responsibility in that role in Congress. And it's time for us to rectify those wrongs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Jerry?
Yes, and before I ask, again, I want to invite our audience, if you have a question, please just type it in so that we can see it. I know that we usually see it on the Facebook Live side, but if you will, just please ask a question, because don't want this to just be a conversation between us three. You have, like I said, quite an interesting background. You and your siblings all graduated from Howard.
Yes. Well, me and my sister graduated from Howard.
Okay.
My husband graduated from Howard, and his siblings graduated from Howard. So we're a Howard family here, and I know there's a lot of rattlers. Every time we go in the room, the rattlers try to pop out, try to, you know, tag team me, but, you know, HU all day, and it's a legacy. And, you know, going to Black colleges, the family, the atmosphere, the nurturing that we have for anyone who attends HBCUs, that is the community, the foundation that even when I was running, like, when we see each other, we know what it is, and the confidence to be yourself and not to look for approval outside. I think that was the beautiful thing about experiencing a historically Black college.
Okay. You mentioned the impetus around Black women and the need to address some issues. Are you familiar with Georgia and their plan, In Her Hands pilot program? Are you familiar with that?
No.
Oh, okay. It's a program where hundreds of Black women in Georgia will get $850 per month in guaranteed income. So I mean, you know, that maybe, I know during your campaign you spoke about, you know, incentives, if you will. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
So what happened during my campaign, we created the People's Prosperity Plan. That was written almost a year ago now. And I wrote that policy when I saw what was going on with the community. And I started seeing other districts, other communities instituting similar pilot programs. And the one that I felt would actually be equitable for our entire district was if we could give $1,000 stimulus checks for anyone making less than $75,000, that would kind of keep us on an equal footing. Now, when we put that policy forth, there was policy being put forth also for a similar program for seniors, a similar program also for children. What we saw happen was that the child tax credit is what was actually adopted. And now we have people receiving that tax credit for each child. However, if you look at our district, we have over 50% that's 55 and older. So what are the implications of that? Are we saying that 55 and older in our elderly population who's struggling the same way that younger families are struggling, or even more, I would even say, because they're living by themselves, rent is going up, are they not allowed to actually recover? Or single people not allowed to recover who have so much debt? And that's why I thought that was the most equitable means. But what's interesting about it is that most of my opponents, even now, they say it can't happen. But, you know, I feel like you're walking around with your eyes closed, because we saw that in Atlanta, they have a program that, and I don't remember that name, but I know that Keisha Lance Bottom, she used her $2 million in discretionary funding, gave it to the Urban League, and Urban League is spearheading that program for $500 for 300 families for a year. And that's their pilot program. We see in Los Angeles, they're doing a similar program that's actually going through municipalities. They use $352 million of the rescue fund money, which discretionary funds, to give $1,000 a month for a year, and also in San Francisco. So the real issue that we're having here is, what will we do to make sure that every family is able to recover? Right now, God willing, once we're elected January 11th, we will inherit, we'll have inheritance powers, which means I can inherit Alcee Hastings' his policies, we're going to inherit his budget. And because we were not able to earmark in 2021, we're trying to see if we can earmark even more in 2022 and hopefully get some of that funding there to help our families. So when people say, oh, it can never happen, Congress won't pass it, it's just a signal that they really don't understand the power that's embedded in Congress, which is the power of the purse and the power of the pen.
I see you learned a whole lot in your 3 days going up there to mingle. Tell us a little bit about that. How was it? How did you and House Speaker Pelosi get along? Give us a little insight on that.
Well, it was good. She was, it was surprising, right? Because when I met her, you see her on TV and you hear things, but when I met her, she reminded me of like my grandmother in a sense. And when I say that to some people, they're like, oh, but she's so fierce. And I said, well, maybe you don't know my grandmother. But she's not playing with you. And she will let you know, don't walk out those doors and embarrass me. And that's what I got from her, because she was very encouraging. She said, you came here for a purpose, you have a plan, and you got to do everything to your ability to be yourself and represent your people and make that plan happen. So from there, I was like, well, there we go, right? That's the charge. Let's make it happen for the district.
Okay.
For something that sounds so simple, why do you think so many people fumble with it? And as
the People's Prosperity Plan?
No, you what you said, what Speaker Pelosi said.
Well, I think right now a lot of people look towards politics because it's visible. There's a time when no one paid attention, but now everybody watches politics, and you become kind of like a celebrity. And I think a lot of people want celebrity, and they want to be seen everywhere, a part of a group. And so you lean towards there. To be honest with you, when you have that kind of visibility, you are able to put more pressure on certain groups. But putting pressure because you're saying a lot of things and getting a lot of attention, that's not the best way, I believe, to build relationships, right? And so I think that's why people defer to that, what I call, it's like a reality culture, reality TV culture. You just want to be seen and saying everything. But after the cameras turn off, you still got that relationship that you created, which is a toxic relationship to deal with.
Right. Well, and to ask that in this social media driven culture, as well as to deal with a community that is connected but not really in it, how do we balance that? Because for what it seems is that for all the information, it seems that the community lacks the access to the information or even to how to understand it. So how do you propose doing that? And I'm sure you've seen that going through this community. So how do you go about doing that?
Well, we have an advantage in that we are actually electing a new person. And I could only assume that when the late Congressman Alcee Hastings was elected, a lot of the education was done on the forefront, right? Because, once you get in, it's new, you start teaching the community, you start creating the relationships, and then, everybody who you were there at the time knows. But then there's people who are moving and growing. They don't really understand what the office does. So our first thing that we're going to be doing is having an office that's actually going all around the community and letting everybody know, here's the services that we provide. A lot of people don't understand and know that, we can help you with immigration. We do casework. So we can help you with any federal agency, IRS. If you're a military personnel, we can help you with that. So there's a lot of things that the office does, but a lot of people don't know. So that's our first thing, educating you on how we can help, especially right now with the Build Back Better plan, especially right now with a lot of proposals that we have. There is monies that are being set aside to help for childcare. Housing is so imperative. And so right now, we're partnering with the state legislators who are pushing their monies, bringing federal money in, and hopefully being able to provide immediate aid because, building housing is going to take some time, right? Having funding for stipends, that might take some time. But if we're able to get any kind of direct relief through even stipends to help you pay for your taxes or your rent or your housing, then that's when we'll have immediate relief. And so there's multiple ways that we want to be there connecting with the community and giving them those resources. At the end of the day, that's why I ran. I like people, I like giving, and it's just fun for me to be out there. So I'd rather be out there doing the casework, have the right people doing the casework, and meeting the needs of the community. And once we start seeing that change, then my work is done. I was out today and they said, "Oh, you're going to be there for decades." And I said, "Oh, no, I'm just there to help the change, to bring the progress and look for someone to a succession plan. So I can sit back and be watching this show with you guys on the new person and talking to them and guiding them."
With some of those federal funds, we can indeed be helped. But no, I'm serious. Okay, that's serious too. Okay, now I want to just play a little bit. Vulnerability. Okay, I know as much as we think that we're everything, what areas are that you would admit to being weak at, and how do you plan on strengthening that? And that's one part. The other thing is, and you spoke about it a little bit. How do you plan on galvanizing and to get the vote, to get us out to vote where we need to be?
I think the two biggest areas where there's vulnerability is that I've never been a public servant in the sense of politically. Serving on different boards, serving in different capacities is slightly different than what we see here, but it's still the fundamentals as far as being strong with relationship building, trust, being out there. And politics are a little different because it seems like a lot of areas are they're contrasted or they're competitive, but there's some fundamental truth that still lie, right? If I can help you look good, I'll look good, right? We're a team. And so we've been meeting with all the electeds, either in my district, outside my district. If you touch and concern, you are part of the team. And so I know I'm new here, but we're going to get to know each other and we're going to figure out how to help each other and make sure you look good so I look good and the people get the help. And so that is an area that if we didn't have a special election, I would have more time to do. But realistically, it's looking like, whereas on a regular election, you win the primary in August, then you have until November, 3 months to campaign for the general. And that's with a lot of others. And then you have another 3 months to do orientation and get everything together. I don't have that luxury. I was told that, once we win January 11th, I'm supposed to be in DC January 12th. January 13th, we'll be getting sworn in, and I will be voting on bills the following week. So it's kind of like we got to do it all at the same time. So my days start at 4 or 5, and I just came in because it's like we have to touch and concern. We have to build this team and be able to fight together.
Okay, and that point there to build your team, Congressman Hastings, and his rock, his person, Mr. Art Kennedy, and so you got to build a team, so you got to find you a Mr. Art Kennedy.
Yes.
Your tentacles have to reach deep, into the community. So what are you planning? How do you plan to do that? What are you doing, Sheila?
Well, I have my Art Kennedy. The funny thing is, when I was running and I first ran against Alcee, they brought over and Art said, "I'm Art Kennedy," and I said, "I heard about you." It was like Batman and Robin, right? And he was like, "I'm Robin." I was like, "Oh my God!" So seeing them work and seeing it for so long, my Art Kennedy is really Nadege LeBlanc. She's with me every step of the way. We grew up together. We live in Miramar. That is someone who I always say that she always understood the community because she has 100 kids. She really doesn't. She has 5, but she has kids in every single high school, elementary, college. And, I have 2 teenagers, but the fight that we fought together as single mothers at one time, raising kids with learning disabilities, kids with mental health issues, children going to jail. You have to have someone who's been in the fight with you and understands that when one of our kids are hurt and we're crying, another mother's crying, we're crying with them. When our husbands are hurt, that's our tears. So she really is that person for me. But we are looking towards just a lot of community members who we reached out. And I'm a person who believes sincerely that there's a place for everyone. And I know some people don't believe in that. They're like, well, that's your enemy. But it's not about my enemy. It's about what you can give to the community. Because when you look good, I look good. And so we've been reaching out, we've been pulling people together. At the end of the day, although we have 2 people we had 11 people in the race. The race is over for 10. There's 2 people who think the race is still going on, but it's not. No, I've been able to connect with the others and figure out, like, what is your next move? I want to help you get there. One of the things that I saw was that when it came to appointments for agencies, right, federal agencies, when it came to even senior positions within those federal agencies, I didn't see enough people being recommended from our district. And that's what I want to do. I want to create opportunities and start uplifting our electeds, because we have a lot of talented people. And our district can't afford to lose the talent. So wherever we can plug them in, wherever we can take young attorneys, young people who are just advocating and plug them in, this is it. This is our time.
How are you best informed? And I guess by that, I mean, I talk to a lot of people who have great intentions for the community and whose work runs deep into the community. But yet there's a gap between their communication with some elected officials. And so how do you propose to build that? Because, their thinking would be, well, you got to be politically connected, and I know that not to be true. So how are you best informed about the issues in the community, and how is it best to enlighten you about the community?
Well, I think that I am living proof that when God shifts generations of leadership, he does what he does. I didn't have community ties. I was just in the community. I had a business. We did community service. I was on several different boards, even an advisory board for the Broward County School Board. And I was just serving like a regular person in a regular capacity. And I didn't know anybody. And I knew the people in the community. I knew the people who we served. And I knew when we were there fighting with the moms, and that was us. So I was that person who felt like you need to be connected, but that's a fallacy. And the best way to connect is to reach out, or even I'm always out, like contact me or contact my team, because we know more than, sometimes when you're in the political system too long, you become disconnected because you don't suffer what other people suffer, because people want to impress you and they want to help you. But when you're not politically tied, they'll say whatever they have to say to you. One of the issues we talked about today, I had someone call me today about schooling, and her child who was in one school who has a learning disability, they took all the money of the private school and they want to put the child out because they said they can't meet their needs. And they don't know that now they know the Democratic nominee and this school. But think about it. You're advertising trying to get minority kids. You have the parents pay all this money just to turn them away and kick them out in the middle of the year and say, we can't service them. No, we can't live like that. So if I wasn't there, just a regular person talking, she wouldn't know she can tell me that. So we have to hold them accountable when they do that. So I think the best way to do it is when you have a calling on your life, pursue it. Pursue it, be loud. People will recognize you, and you don't need those relationships. They will come once God places you in the right way.
I don't know, my mind was drawing a blank just then. You had me swooning. Okay. You do have a strong tie to children with disabilities, and because of your own situation. We've often said that the place that you can hold a person down is in the educational system. If you can do that, if you could control that, what do you plan, or if you plan, how do you plan to get involved in we're going to have a displacement here in Broward County dealing with our school board issue.
Mm-hmm.
Do you foresee, or do you have any influence, or would you get involved in situations pertaining to the educational system here, Broward County educational system?
Yes, of course. One of the things that when I first ran, what I noticed was that a lot of the issues that our children were having, a lot of the teachers who were being overburdened is because teachers were expected to teach. They were expected to be physical therapists, mental therapists, behavioral therapists, and it was just too much on them. And I was told that, oh, well, you don't know what you're talking about because federal government can't help. And I said, no, if we put money through the Healthcare Act, we can get money into the schools to help alleviate some of those pressures. And after the pandemic, sure enough, $3 billion came in going to schools through healthcare. So whatever I can do to support schools, especially making sure that those disabilities are being treated, making sure that we actually have food that has nutrients in the schools, helping the teachers so they can actually get paid more. And if they are going to do any supplemental services, that they get paid and they're considered first. That is my priority. But with education, it's not just high school and college and elementary school education. Right now, we have a real opportunity to start educating and have certificate programs when it comes to different types of engineering, different types of IT, those kind of programs, which are the job market needs those people. And I always remind people where we were a few years ago when IT first started and everybody was getting these certificates. I don't know if you remember. At that time, people were getting certificates to go into IT, very short term, and they were making money. And I said, no, I'm going to go to law school. And looking back 20 years later, I have debt and they have that certificate and they have this career. But we can create that now. There's a lot of infrastructure programs and money coming down for people who know how to use the robots and the machine. And those are certificate programs. So we can benefit by creating jobs and having continuous education through certificate and vocational school. That's not just going to affect younger kids, but adults to pursue a new career.
Yeah. Well, and that, now that you mentioned that, and one of the biggest things about Broward is the lack or the decline in major corporate presence.
Mm-hmm.
If corporate jobs aren't here, then are you just as willing to be as committed for light rail that will allow people, residents in Broward, to get to work in other places if we can't draw those corporations here? I mean, we have right now Miami, but we need better mobility in order to make that realistic.
Yeah.
As well as, I mean, looking at Orlando and some of the other areas where we see technology growing. But if you're committed to living in Broward, that becomes a challenge for you. And I'm saying that being a 35-year IT person, those are some of the challenges now of people in certain areas in terms of, do I choose a career like that when the jobs just aren't here?
Yeah, I think definitely investing in the Bright Line, investing in those transportation mechanisms are imperative. But what's also very important is that we invest in our entrepreneurs, we invest in our community and our talent, because this is the first time in my generation where I'm seeing that our culture is being embraced so much that other people are selling our culture, right? So if they're going to sell our culture, let's empower our entrepreneurs to sell their own. Let's take control of our own narratives. And so I think that we need to do both simultaneously. Invest in our talent. We have so much talent. So we don't necessarily need to turn into a corporate community, because I don't even know if that's us, right? But what we can do is keep our culture, keep our community, and invest in ourselves. And just like, with this campaign, I invested in myself because I knew that we needed different, and I knew that we could have done it. And I knew I didn't have to pretend to be anybody else but myself. And I believe that in our district too. We don't have to be anybody else. Let's just invest in us.
And it's that brought up a lot of questions about your investment in you
Hmm.
from the money side. So I mean, I don't want to. I don't want to jump into that. That's a whole nother story at another time. So I'll leave that alone. But right now though, Sheila, your district is extremely large. You're over in Belle Glade and the Big Sugar area. You
Hmm.
know, how is your relationship? Do you have one? How do you plan on expanding that? That relationship is beneficial to uh,
Hmm.
the the citizens of the Glades, if you will. And how are you, if you thought about bringing some HBCUs from an agricultural standpoint to Big Sugar? And I'm sorry, Howard doesn't have an agricultural mechanical component,
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
but
Well,
but you know,
but that's an excellent question because
sure.
with the short period we have to get to know people and meet people. I have been speaking to the different corporations in our district. And one of the things that I did not realize until I actually went and I saw it for myself was the technology that was embedded in these agricultural farms, for not just sugar, but for even vegetables, the satellites, the intellectual property that they owned, the whole mechanisms. And, it started fascinating me because my son is 17 years old. He just had an interview with MIT. And he's very interested in engineering. And I remember when he was young, so this is my stepson, we've been married for now 5 years. And I would tell my husband, he needs to stop playing those video games all day, ping, 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 no video games. And he's like, well, I'm going to be an engineer, so I have to play these video games. And now when he's interviewing and I go in and I see the technology and even the way they're doing medical surgery, it's with the same joysticks, the same stuff they play the video games, the same technology. That's what they're using. And I think that what the jobs they're providing, that's just one aspect, right? But if we look at the intellectual property technology skills that are there, we can really start transforming our district by using them to teach that information, to how to teach those programs, because that's not just going to be a Glades thing now, right? That becomes an everybody thing. That becomes, well, we have this program, and then we're thinking about, not right now, you could be thinking about just growing vegetables, right? But think about it, one of the biggest markets that's emerging is cannabis, not just thinking about marijuana, but the actual cannabis plant, which they're using now for water irrigation, even construction. So those skills are imperative. Now, taking that technology and partnering it with FAMU, a Black college, that makes you okay. It makes you feel okay to learn in a place where it's safe and you're accepted for who you are and your Blackness. I think that's where we really need to head, in that direction, just merging the two. And as we merge the two, we can start hashing out where we have places where we disagree. But we first must acknowledge the benefit and the potential benefit to everyone.
Mhm. There's two things, HBCU, and we know the value
Hmm.
of HBCUs. We all can agree to that. Okay, we got four here in the state of Florida that really are doing some great things. I'm a graduate of Florida Memorial. I attended FAMU, but I'm a graduate of Florida Memorial. And you mentioned technology, but
Hmm.
also the how do I want to say it? The reassurance from our congressional people and legislators that that they will survive.
Right.
I dare not ask you what are your plans to make sure that our HBCUs will thrive and
Hmm.
continue to. I'm going to say this. Attorney Benjamin Crump just launched a criminal justice, social justice institution at St. Thomas University.
My alma mater.
Oh, okay.
I
So
went to St.
now
Thomas Law.
we need to get y'all to come back to the HBCUs and create this thing that we need. So, but congratulations. But yeah, so again, I think my question was, how do you, uh, what are your plans to continue that these HBCUs thrive?
Well, first is funding, right? But
Mhm.
outside of funding, we have to put them in positions where they are on the cusp of change, like the cutting edge. So just like we said with agricultural technology, bringing FAMU in now puts them on the cusp of that entity that we see is expanding everywhere, bringing FAMU and other HBCUs into our medical centers and research centers, where now they have programs connected to it. So now when it even comes to any kind of health sciences, surgery, they're part of that. So we have to start identifying the strong suits in each HBCU and partnering with them with organizations that provide jobs. We saw that with Howard. Howard did that with Google. So they had a satellite Google office, and now Howard students were actually being exposed to the newest technology when it came to Google, and that resulted in direct jobs. So we have to keep doing that, but not just for Howard. We need to do it for more schools also, because although I went to the illustrious Howard University, my FAMU partners, my Florida Memorial partners, I need to see all of us being able to get to that place. Because the truth is, when you go to a HBCU, that was my first time experiencing education in a safe place, where I didn't have to think about that I'm Black or is this or that. I mean, every teacher was like a parent, Miss Cherfilus, where are you? You were late, and we need that nurturing still when we get to college. And so I think we just need to put them on the forefront and make sure they're funded.
Okay. Now, I want to say this. I was on a show, a podcast with the NNPA, the National Newspaper Publishers Association. This morning, we had two Howard University students who are professionals in this TikTok. And so they brought up the issue of how Black TikTokers, if you will, are not getting the same pay that white TikTokers, that thing, are not getting the same pay. So there is some discrimination that we need to pay attention to. So when we begin to hook up to Google or to Facebook or TikTok or whatever, we need to be mindful that there is continuity across the board, even across the board when it comes to certain things, because they are still taking advantage of Black TikTokers or Black social media gurus, if you will. So why did I say all that?
Well, I know one reason why we should be saying it, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, because Ms. McCormick, as that is one of the being able to establish laws to address this new digital age that we're in is where we are woefully behind. And so while on one hand we're arguing about how much we're getting paid on TikTok, at the end of the day, TikTok is the owner of the content, because once you post it, it's theirs, not yours. And so how do we begin to address that entanglement? Because it has taken us years to address it in recording, as well as the other industries. And so if we're going to keep having these issues, when are we going to learn from the past and begin to address this now?
It's really about empowering our media outlets, our Black media. And what was interesting was when I was running, for me to get myself out, I had to advertise with large firms, right? Just because I just need to get out there. And anytime they put my story out, I mean, to be honest with you, it was racist. Anytime, right? One of the first things they wrote about me, and I have no problem saying about the Sun Sentinel, because I told them, I said, y'all just racist. They said, well, how can this 42-year-old Black woman living in one of the poorest districts have enough money to do this? And I said, excuse me? Did you forget that I'm educated? I was CEO. Did you call? No, when Rick.
We lost you.
We lost you, Sheila.
Okay, sorry, I'm back.
No.
Okay, so when Rick Scott was running, he's a healthcare executive. Did they question him and say, where did he find it? He's from one of the Hickvilles. They didn't say anything like that.
Well, they knew he had just taken $1 million, but that's another issue.
He stole it, right?
Right.
But they praised him. They praised him for his ability. When it came to me, the story was always negative. The only people who actually said the right story was the Black community. And so one of the things I said, you know what? I have to figure out how to empower Black media. I have to figure out how to lift up those voices, because as long as they have the ability to be out there, and I spoke to it was Island TV, and she was like, well, with the Arbitron ratings, and she gave me the whole background of what we can do to help. I said, we have to control our narrative. I'm new. This is the first time I experienced it. So I'm going to be leaning on you guys to help me be able to put forth laws so we can own our own story.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay, let me since this is a good segue into the NNPA will be here in January in Hollywood. I know you'll just be getting into DC, but if your schedule would permit, perhaps the 21st or the 20th of January, I know it's different. It's I'm putting it
It's
out
good
there.
and still.
It would be our honor to have you address the NNPA, which is 239 Black publishers from across the country. They'll be here in Hollywood, and it would be our honor if you could.
Yes.
If you could, if not, create a what do you call those things? A pre-recorded
Virtual.
message or something.
Yes,
We'll,
yes.
we'll talk about that, Sheila.
That
We'll
would be
talk about
great.
that.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And so yeah, I see you very much as a bridge, because I think our community right now is at a pivotal point. I mean, as Bobby and I were talking earlier, and again, it's not a bias; it's just a fact that who's our foundation for elections is aging, and so how do we get uh, not just a repeat of those who just know the system, but how do we get new people into this system? Because that's the only way it's going to change. I mean,
Right.
because if we keep putting the same thing in, again, it's chaos. We're getting the same thing out. And so Broward is changing. So what are some of your ideas about how to re-engage Broward
Well,
and
I think
become?
we have to turn back to being a merit-based system, right? Because what I noticed is that a lot of people were in positions because of who they knew, but not because they could do the
Mm-hmm.
job. And I saw a lot of that when I was at the canvassing board, and I heard some of these legal arguments that I said, "Wait a minute, where is this happening?" And it was because I knew this person gave me an opportunity. But I think once we go back to merit-based, right, supporting candidates because you're like, wow, this person can do it, not because I knew you and your brother and your cousin and you hooked me up here. I think that that's when we're going to start hunting for talent, and you're going to start
Mm-hmm.
finding that new person and putting them in. And that's when we're going to see changes. I met with an elected official, and she was saying that she actually has been able, her city has been able to pull down a lot of federal funds. And I asked her, well, how did you do that? She's like, well, I hire everybody who can do the work, not because I knew you,
mhm.
which is a very, it's clear, right? When you hire people because you know them, they might not be able to do the work. But when you hire people because they can do the work, that's when you start seeing real change.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, we got a little bit in, but there's a lot more. And one of our guests, she wants to get an opportunity to really delve into the sphere of Black women. Her name is Shelley Timothy Paul,
Mm.
and she really wants to ask you some questions. She couldn't get it right tonight, but she will be contacting you. Very community-minded person of Haitian descent.
I
We
know
learned,
her.
okay, good. So she wanted to come on the show tonight. However, we didn't allow others to come on when we had others on. But
Mhm.
if you would not mind to come back on a panel with Shelley and some others to discuss in detail some of your plans that concern women and the whole makeup and the rights and business and all of that stuff.
Of course, she was one of the first people to interview me when we
Mhm,
had a self-care forum.
mhm.
And she was one of the first people there who interviewed. Yes.
Okay, 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 Sheila, if you would, time is running out. So if you would, um, encapsulate, what's the word, man? Help me out. I mess up sometimes. You on mute. You on mute, Perry. You on mute.
Encapsulate.
Thank you.
But can I get just one question in?
Sure you can, Perry.
Okay, please. No, I was reading recently. They were talking about the lack of black opportunities on the Hill
Ah,
for young interns, and usually it is with most of the black staff. But again, most of the everyone wants to have a diverse staff. that also begins at home. They say charity begins at home. So, what are your plans to ensure that our young youth, even if they don't, are at least exposed to this opportunity?
Well, we're recruiting right now heavily, and we're not just taking youth, we're taking everybody. So once we get past this election, we're starting the campaign probably with 3 employees, and we can expand up to 16. So we're going to start interviewing and bringing people in. But right after the election was certified, I had to go to DC the next day. And I sat down with Representative Joyce Beatty. She's the president of Congressional Black Caucus, and Val Demings. And they said, listen, these positions are some of the highest in the world. And if you don't hire a Black person, and if you don't hire a Black woman, no one will. They said, look around. They hire themselves. You have an obligation. And that's it. It's true. And the first time I walked in, they said that. So that is our responsibility. We need to have us represented in those spaces in Washington, D.C. It's just hard to get people who can get up and move. But when we talk about, we're looking at chiefs of staffs, district directors, legislative aides, communication directors. That's an opportunity to get to Washington, D.C. to do it there. And so we're looking for people in the district who can get out there and do it, because those relationships it's an opportunity of a lifetime. Opportunity of a lifetime.
Okay, now can I do that? Can I do it now, Perry?
Sure. Yeah, no.
Okay, Sheila, if you will, in 45 seconds or a minute, tell us what your first thing when you get to DC. What would that be?
Economic stimulus. We have to make sure that the money is coming into our district, that everyone who is in the municipal leaders, city leaders know how to pull that money down. Whatever opportunities we lost because we did not have a member in Congress, we are fighting right now to inherit those powers. Like I mentioned, we can earmark again. Last year, our district had no earmarks. So if we can expand our budget and be able to earmark twice as much, then we can start touching and concerning and changing people's lives. So economic stimulus, healthcare into the community, floating clinics, we got to do it. We got to make sure that we're thriving and not just barely surviving. We got to make sure that the inflation that we see going on, even with food, with the high gas prices, that we're still able to sleep at night knowing that, our kids can eat tomorrow, our families are okay. Economic and health, we got to take care, including mental health. Mental health is so imperative for adults who are trying to survive now that COVID, and we're realizing that we lost so many people, and our kids are noticing they lost so much and they're anxious. We got to take care of ourselves, especially our Black men who sometimes don't know how to cope, but we got to do it.
Okay. Mr. Buzzer?
I thought we were finished. You said you were encapsulated.
I was.
I thought you were bringing us to a close.
All right, I will. Then I'm going to take this time. No, okay. No, Sheila, thank you so very much. When you get to DC, I want you to tell Joyce Birdsong Beatty that the Henrys said hello. Joyce is from Dayton, Ohio. We met her, many years ago when we first moved to Dayton. So she is indeed a friend. Val Demings, they are Deltas. Now I don't know where you fit in that. She's from Howard. I don't know where you fit in, but it's all good.
The first day I got there, they said to me, "Are you part of a sorority?" And I said, "No." She said, "Good, because being part of no sorority is better than being part of the wrong sorority."
That's good. Now I want to leave with this, and for real, Sheila, thank you so very much. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. Now that came from Alice Walker, So hold on to what you got, because you do. Thank you so very much. God bless you, and please don't forget us. We won't forget you. God bless.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
Okay,
you
don't leave just yet. We're gonna leave with this right here.